All right, what's up, guys? It's the guys over here at Black Hills Project again. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Airsoft and how it has shaped our thoughts and our opinions on gear and guns and tactics. It's kind of becoming a hot topic right now with some of the social media influencers that are becoming more outspoken about it. So we thought we'd kind of chime in and talk about our experience with it. And that's Airsoft is actually how we met each other.
Yeah. Yep.
It's been, probably 5-6 years ago. Something like that.
6, I believe, yeah.
So yeah, that's actually, Airsoft is how I met a lot of my good friends, Hunter being my best friend, and that's how we met, how we started getting into guns and gear and shooting. And I had Airsoft stuff before I had even my first AR, and Airsoft really allowed me to get into the gear side of things and do it in a more affordable way before I kind of plunged really deep into the more expensive stuff and building real rifles and all of that. So I guess we can kind of start out with just talking about how we got into Airsoft and stuff like that. I remember getting Airsoft guns when I was like just a little kid and shooting them in the backyard with my dad and stuff like that. And then, started getting the other friends in the area started getting more nicer Airsoft guns like the pump shotguns, and then someone would get one of the AEG battery-powered AKs and just playing in their backyards and in the woods and stuff like that, and then eventually going to our first events and then going to Milsims. How was that kind of evolution for you?
Yeah, it was pretty similar. Obviously, I mean, if you started playing Airsoft when you were younger, you probably just got a little spring pistol from Walmart and shot your friends in the face without eye protection and all that in the house, and that's how it started for me.
And I think that's how a lot of people view Airsoft. That's just what they think of too. They don't.
Yeah, they either think it's either that or it's just a bunch of fat, overweight people running around acting like they're in the military. Which the second
far off.
Yeah, I was gonna say the second one's more actually what it is, but you meet some diamonds in the rough. But yeah, I mean, I remember when I was younger, I got those little springers, and then like just about everybody in terms of we're speaking in an Airsoft perspective, not the firearms right now, because I grew up with both. I was a very avid hunter shooter. I was actually I was an All-American ski shooter when I was in high school and middle school and all that. So I was around firearms a lot, but all shotgun and all sporting shotgun, nothing to do with, like rifle, pistol, nothing like that. So Airsoft was essentially my gateway to this whole thing. I think Airsoft, like video games and sometimes movies, I guess, are the gateway to, or a gateway to what we do now. And I don't really know how to define what we do now is, I guess, maybe just shooting, doing things in the wood, just all that kind of stuff. But I would say Airsoft, it was obviously our gateway to it. But I bought a freaking sniper rifle because I thought that was sweet. I was gonna shoot people from miles away with a little pellet, and lo and behold, it got about 50 yards, if that, before dropping off. But I remember nobody wanted to play with me after that because I was always bragging about how I modded it to go like 600 FPS because I took out this nozzle or something like that, and nobody wanted to play with me after that, which go figure. But
yeah, no, that's another good point too, is like both of us really grew up around guns and hunting and shooting, but like I don't think at least my dad was not really, like, he didn't get his first AR till I was probably a teenager, and it was very like hunting focused and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And and for a lot of people that, they're not raised around guns at all, airsoft is a really big entrance point into that world.
I know plenty of a few of my friends have not had nothing to do with any kind of firearms, not even hunting or anything like that when they were younger, and they're definitely into firearms now because of airsoft.
Yeah, so not only is it a good, or it can be a good training tool, but it's, obviously, it brings a lot of people to real firearms and real kit, and a lot of people, a cool thing about it is a lot of people have lot of really decent real kit before they even have a real rifle. So
That's how it was for me.
yeah, same. So yeah, that's, like you said, we both kind of grew up around guns, but airsoft really introduced us to the more quote unquote tactical side, or AR type side of things. We met through both working for a airsoft production company. We were actually had the opportunity to be a pretty big part of an airsoft event company that put on a lot of events, a lot of pretty big events. So that's actually how we met each other, and played a lot of events together, got to know each other. And after that, we left that event company. We kind of continued to hang out and do our own thing, and that's all kind of led to this. But
Awesome podcast.
yeah, this amazing podcast. But yeah, I would say that so there's 3 or 4 things that airsoft really did for me. I would say it really influenced what gear I buy and how I set it up. It influenced how I set up my rifles, and it influenced I had another one in my head, but I forgot it here.
Well, you'll remember it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
It's definitely if you go into it, either the way I did it was I had no desire. I mean, not that I didn't have any desire to get into firearms alongside of airsoft, but I was in it for the airsoft. I was huge into it. I was really, really big into it. I loved upgrading and working on all my guns, and it was, for me, honestly, airsoft was kind of just the being able to mess around and modify things, and over playing, if I'm being honest. I loved playing, but I really liked just tweaking my gear and setting up guns differently and all this other stuff, because I get inspired very easily by, obviously, like reference photos from online, and so that's how I ended up progressing my, essentially, not really my rifles, because I kind of set guns up weird a little bit in airsoft, but my gear 100%. Everybody wanted to clone and wanted to do like Milsim, like obviously Milsim, yes, but real military simulating the kits that all the military used, and I had no desire to do that. I knew that it was not a comfortable, unless you were, special forces, and even then, that gear is not like super comfortable. I've tried it. It's not amazing. I mean, it's good, but it's not amazing. Cry Precision pant, like the combat top and pants, are really not that comfortable. If I'm being like, I don't think they're comfortable. And so, and just to put it out there, I owned a lot of Cry Precision. I owned a lot of Patagonia. I owned LBT plate carriers. Like all this stuff, I owned it. So I on top of that, I owned
AOR2.
Yeah, the expensive shit. But on top of that, I owned a lot of repro stuff, which they don't want you to hear this, but it's obviously it's not the same, but it's very similarly made, and the quality is, I mean, it's the same material. It's literally just how it's stitched is the difference. There's nothing, the material is the exact same. So,
and that,
we can get into that too.
Yeah, I would say that for me, that's actually one of the biggest things that I learned from airsoft was, I mean, there's definitely training benefits to it, but the biggest thing for me was being able to actually shake out gear. Because like every airsoft event I'd go to, like, I mean, just like everyone else, you started with a freaking cross draw, $30 Amazon vest, and you take that out once, and you're like, yeah, this kind of sucks. So then you go on Amazon, you buy the $40 little chest rig,
The
and then that
condor
starts.
chest rig.
Yep.
Yeah.
You throw some pouches on that, and you're like, this is kind of like flappy and uncomfortable. So then you go, you buy the Airsoft JPC, and you're like, oh, this is sweet, and but every event, I can remember distinctly, I thought that I had it figured out. I ran the whole, the 3 mags in your placard on your chest rig, and then 3 mags on top of that, and then like some pistol mags on top of that. And the first time I got into a little BB war, I went to go lay down, and I was like, yo, I can't lay down.
Like heaving for breath with the bullets pushing into your stomach.
Yeah, and it's like you're like 3 feet off the ground because you're laying on top of all these mags. And then I remember like trying to do just like a belt kit, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Like I'm staying nice and cool, and like I don't have anything on my chest. This is great. And then I tried to like run through some bushes, and I was like, oh yeah, my hips are like an extra foot wide on either side. Like this ain't it. Yeah. And like stuff like running ghillie suits and finding out that a ghillie suit really snags on like trees and stuff. And so going to just like a Viper hood and just stuff like that. Like if you don't, Airsoft really gives you an opportunity to try out your stuff, because, your plate carrier could look super cool, but if you don't go out and run around in the woods or at like a mount facility with it for 2 days, do you really know if it works? If you wear it for an hour on the flat range, yeah, it probably works great for that. But if I'm leaving the car for 8 hours, can my plate carrier carry enough water? Do I have room for snacks? Do I have enough mags? Like stuff like that. That's where the huge advantage in Airsoft is to me.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, if somebody's taking it as seriously, or okay, you can't take Airsoft too seriously, but if you go into it with a head of what can I learn from it, that's where the benefit of Airsoft is. But I mean, I remember I had the same progression as you. I mean, I went from, I think I spent $500 and I was like 16 at the time. I had saved $500, which was a lot of money for a 16-year-old. But I bought a gun, a cross-draw vest, some really crappy goggles, and a bunch of other like little mini miscellaneous things. And I remember getting the cross-draw vest, and I was like, there's no way. One, this thing looks so ugly, and two, I was just stupid. I'm not going to do this. Mm-hmm. So I went and got the Condor plate or chest rig, and I actually modified the hell out of that because mine was, it was the one that was all the mag pouches were already sewed onto it. So it was the pistol, it was a double M4 mag with a sewed on pistol pouch in front of 3 or 4 different like double M4 mag pouches. And I knew immediately, I'm like, I can't run the pistol pouches because one game, exactly like you said, I laid down and I was like, okay, yeah, this ain't working. So I literally, I pulled up all the threads from the pistol pouches and I pulled those off. And I just, because I didn't really run a pistol either. That's another thing you learn in Airsoft, at least. I don't know. That's the one thing. In the real world, I don't really know how much you use your pistol. I think it's probably very similar to Airsoft, where if you get a pistol in Airsoft, you're probably not going to use it.
Yeah, it's because your main rifle broke or isn't working, and that's the only reason I ever pulled my pistol.
Because Airsoft is very unrealistic in a sense that you can get magazines that hold 300 rounds, right. And so you don't really ever have to reload. So I got rid of my pistol altogether and got rid of the pistol mag and the pistol mag pouches, and that was way better. And then I went, instead of going to the next step, which was like just an Airsoft plate carrier, I went and bought a Mayflower APC, like my third game out, because I was just like, I really want to do this, and this is a real piece of kit that I can run, and it's legit, it's expensive, and it's cool, and I also was like just a little kind of, yeah, it's real, it's cool, like I'm gonna have real gear and all that. That was my mindset. My mindset was still not, I'm going to train. I just wanted cool gear.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of Airsoft, honestly, is like everybody nerds out over having the coolest gear. and the nicest gear. It's a huge part of it.
Yep. Which is pretty cringy, honestly, looking
It,
back at it.
it is, but I will also say that it actually worked to my advantage, because when I ultimately stopped playing airsoft and got out of kind of that scene, I didn't have to go buy a plate carrier to use with my AR or a chest rig or really anything, because I still had all of that gear from my airsoft. And it was like you, eventually I worked my way up to having real reputable brands like Faro Concept Slickster, and I had an LBX carrier at the time, but I think I don't remember if I had my FCPC when I was playing airsoft or not, but basically, like,
you bought it right when you were done.
yeah, I think it was right at the end. But yeah, ultimately, I had all that gear already, so that was a huge investment that I didn't have to make. And another thing is I'd already been. I mean, geez, how many airsoft guns did the two of us go through, man? Like,
I had like 2 guns at one point, but over probably 5 years, I probably had like 30 or 40. Like,
yeah,
not all at once, but I was just so into, like I am now with real stuff. I bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold everything.
Yep.
It was insane, because I would build something and I'd be like, nah, this isn't the one that I want. And I would know. The funny thing is, I never even took it out to play. I just got it and I finished it. I got it done on the table, and I was like, no, that's not it. I sold the next day and bought something else. That's just that wasn't probably the greatest way to like do it, but that's, again, I was really in it for building stuff and tweaking things and all that. So
I definitely did the same thing a few times, but the cool thing about that is it's fairly affordable to build out an airsoft gun, and and it's also a lot easier, because it's not a real gun, to flip it, if you decide you don't like it. So having that experience of having built out like 30 different rifles, as soon as it came time to build an AR, I was like, I already know what I like and what I want. And I was like, I know I want this laser, and I know I want to put it at this place on my gun, and I need this pressure pad. And because we'd already, like, there is airsoft knockoffs of, I mean, basically anything in the gun world. Yeah.
everything.
I still have my airsoft rifle here. I've got a PLC on it. I've got a Surefire flashlight. They're both knockoffs. I've got a knockoff ACOG. It's got a Wrist 2 rail. I mean,
you never know looking at it though that they're fake.
No, and the laser has a red laser and an IR laser. The white light is decent.
The IR laser is actually probably full power too.
Yeah, it's actually brighter than my real app PLC.
Yep.
So that's another huge advantage and that's, especially if you're a younger dude who maybe can't get a hold of an AR yet or can't afford an AR yet. You can grab an airsoft gun, start tinkering with how you want things, and say, you're not old enough to buy an AR yet. Well, first of all, maybe just, find someone old enough and have them buy it for you. But you could buy, I'd like EOTech. I want to grab an EOTech. Grab the EOTech and slap it on your airsoft gun until you can get an AR, that's...
I mean, and you can find, it was a lot harder to find, or maybe not harder to find, but harder to get the repro stuff back in when we were playing it. It was,
oh yeah,
and I would say it wasn't hard to get. It was annoying to get. How about that?
It was not in retail
from China.
Yeah, it was not in retail stores when we did it. Now it's just like,
now it is.
Yeah,
most of it at least.
And now everybody has officially licensed, there's licensed Glock. Like back when we played, having a Glock was like a flex.
Yeah, now, because they were they had made, a bunch of Chinese companies made unauthorized replicas of Glocks, and Glock sued the hell out of all of the companies, so nobody made Glocks anymore. So yeah, if you had a Glock, you were somebody cool back in the day, because it was like, oh my god, how much did you pay for that? It was, you probably paid more than a real Glock for those things.
I remember I had a 249 belt fed, which it's not a belt fed in airsoft, but just, so people understand. I had a 249 and I traded it for a Glock 17 airsoft gun, because I was like, I just want one so bad. But now Glock has licensed replicas, BCM has licensed replicas, Daniel Defense has licensed replicas. I mean,
There's Daniel Defense out the ass in Airsoft.
yeah.
They license everything. The
Yep.
Sig actually makes, I don't know if they're in-house, but they assemble their own airsoft guns now.
Yep. Yeah, you can get the MCXs, the M17s. I mean,
I think they have the MPX now, which is the one that I wanted for the longest time. But of course, like a year after I got out of playing Airsoft, they finally came out with one. But I mean, there's stuff, there are, whatever you want to have in Airsoft, they have it. There's somebody's made a copy of it, and it's probably, obviously for Airsoft, it's perfect. For real stuff, it's not, but for Airsoft, it's perfect.
It's very easy to build something that's very close to your real rifle,
if not the exact same.
Yep.
My rifle, well, I had a very, very similar rifle to what I had when I just got out of Airsoft, when I just built my first real gun. It was basically like transitioning from, I was just transitioning technically from an Airsoft to a real gun. It was the same setup. I think the rail was the only thing that was different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and that's what
they didn't have Geisley replicas back then, but they do now.
Yep,
so
and they're easy to find now.
They're very easy to find. And if you've gotten to this point in the podcast and you want to know where some of these things are that we're talking about, like these replicas, just message the Instagram page, because I've still got a bunch of stuff bookmarked because I just don't like deleting stuff. So send us a message. I'll get back to you, and I can find whatever you want, and I'll do it for free, because I'm just that passionate about not necessarily playing Airsoft anymore, but I'm passionate about the concept of Airsoft.
Yeah, and he's just an all-around nice fella. So,
well, there you go.
So, and then I would say that a lot of people talk about Airsoft in a tactics sense, and I somewhat disagree with that. You're obviously you're not going to learn tactics at an Airsoft game.
No,
you can practice tactics at an Airsoft game if you and the group of people you come with are disciplined enough to do that.
And you have to be, because you're going to get pissed off really fast just because of the amount of bullshit that, as much as we talk up Airsoft, there's so much more bullshit with Airsoft.
Yeah, there's a reason that we don't really play anymore, and it was mostly the man children that were involved in this.
It's insane how many full-grown babies play Airsoft.
Yep.
But don't let that deter you from doing it. But I would say the best way to get anything out of it is to go with a group of like at least 4 to, I would say at least 5 guys.
Yep.
That are all on the same page, and they all have a specific role.
Yep. And don't get caught up in the man children and the drama. Focus on what you're wanting to learn and what you're wanting to practice, and focus on your group, and don't worry about anyone else.
Yeah,
and
don't even
you will have a good experience that way.
Yep.
But so yeah, tactics are kind of a hit and miss thing with Airsoft, and you're kind of going to get out of that what you put into it. But I will say that I actually think I learned a lot of weapons handling from Airsoft. Because I remember when I got my first AR, and I went out to shoot with Kurt for the first time, who was on the last podcast. And he was just like, he'd been shooting ARs for a long time. He's not an Airsoft guy, but he was just kind of putting me through some basic drills, showing me some stuff. And I was kind of like, yeah, no, this is like just like my Airsoft gun. Like I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And, you know, I'd grown up around guns. I knew gun safety and everything like that. But literally my first time out shooting my AR, I was running sub 3-second reloads.
Oh yeah.
And that's not, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because, yeah, you and me used to sit in hotel rooms and do reload races.
Battles.
Yeah. And so
I remember we got all the guys in, and we would compete to see who could reload one faster. It was so it was really gay. but it was really fun at the same time.
Oh, yeah,
the
it was so
best.
much fun. I actually saw some videos of that the other day, and I was laughing at them.
Yeah.
But just even little stuff like that, and like running around with a rifle in the woods, running around. I mean, we got to play at some really cool, like some mount sites, a lot of old abandoned neighborhoods, and abandoned hospitals, stuff like that. So running
Air
around,
Force Base.
yeah, an old Air Force base. Even though it's not a real rifle, the weight's not exactly the same. Even if it's not set up exactly the same as your gun, running around a area with something like that, running around a building or the woods with a plate carrier on with a rifle, you're gonna be learning weapon manipulations.
Yep.
And again, though, just like we said with the tactics, you're gonna get out of that what you put in. Like if you're doing things in a stupid way, you're gonna be getting training scars. But
Yeah. I mean, it's very much I had something that I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was. But you definitely, like you said, you get in you get out what you put in. But it's very much you get an understanding of things. You don't really like you learn things, but you just kind of get an understanding of how things might go in terms of like I don't want to be like the civil unrest, like shit hits the fan, whatever. I'm just saying, in a situation where you'd need these skills, airsoft is a really, really good way to put things into perspective for you.
Yeah, running through a CQB situation in a building in airsoft will humble you immediately.
It's awful. And that's why I've basically, I remember we came back one day and we had done some CQB drills, and I remember coming out of that saying I never want to ever have to do anything CQB. And that's when we started doing the long range and recce stuff because it's just like, I don't want to do that. And like, there's no way that I would ever, unless something catastrophic happens, I will never go into a building in that circumstance.
Yeah, it's a valuable skill to still have, but
for sure.
To think like CQB is, especially for a civilian that doesn't have access to grenades and flashbangs and stuff like that. I mean, you're just
and MP7s.
It's kind of and MP7s. You're kind of just flipping a coin every time you run into a room. Like who's going to see who first and who's going to get the first shot off. And I mean, I'm not.
And obviously, there's ways to go about it. Like there's ways to combat and put it in your favor. But I'm speaking as completely hypothetically as possible. I mean, I don't disclaimer that we probably should have put at the very beginning is neither of us have any kind of cool guy real world experience. Like
we're
not even military. We're just literally just civilians. So
yep, just dudes that enjoy learning and doing this for fun.
Yep.
Yeah, and like basically what we're saying is not that like we're just too smart to have to go into do CQB or something like that. We're saying that I think a lot of people have like a kind of a glorified view of it. It's like, oh, well, you just violence of action, you flow into the room and you blast the bad guys. And you try that a few times because we've done it a lot in airsoft. We've done it many, many times. And pretty much the first few guys in the room die no matter what.
Yeah.
Like unless you have flashbangs and grenades, which we don't. So
yeah. But the cool thing, I will say the cool thing about airsoft is that the pyrotechnics, i.e. the quote-unquote grenades, actually are very effective, and I would trust them in a real-world environment because they can cuss a room if you get the right ones.
Dude.
They can cuss a room so badly that if you don't have ear pro, and even if you do have ear pro, you're going to be rattled the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
It is those R2Bs, they're R2Bs from, I don't think they make them anymore, but they make a new version of it, but from Tag. Those things were brutal. If you were in a room and somebody threw one in there, I would just call him.
I would say quite a bit louder than like a 12 gauge.
Oh yeah, I think they were insane. So as a civilian, you could honestly just go get some of those, and I mean, they're not flashbangs, but they are very devastating to
Yes.
uh, anyone that's not wearing your pro and to people that are, because it's just the concussion of it is just very disorienting and
And
overwhelming.
that's another good point. That's a airsoft gives you an opportunity to actually be around that and see what. Because I mean, you really don't think you're like, oh, whatever. If it's not a flash, if it's just a bang, it's not going to be that bad. But I mean, that stuff leaves you seeing stars, man.
Yeah.
Like even with my ear pro on, it was bad in buildings.
I remember, again, with the man children, there were a lot of people that were just trying to get it banned altogether because there were
Yeah.
a few select groups that were very open about using airsoft as a training group, as a training material thing,
Mhm.
and they had the funds to buy these nades, and they bought them by the truckload. And I mean, this is the right way to do it if you got the money for it and you got the people to do it. But they abused the hell out of these grenades, and it was very effective. They rolled
Yep.
so many people, and they like it was just it, when we ran the events, these Milsims, they were coming to these, and honestly, as a I was probably 20 at the time. It was an inspiring thing, man. Like if
Oh yeah.
you watch these people just throw a bang into the room, and they're actually, I mean, again, these guys they're either young adults or in their 20s or maybe some of them 30s, but they're like younger guys, and they're just rolling people.
Yep.
And so, but these are the guys that live, breathe, this is their thing. But they also, a lot of them actually shoot still too. And I know some of them personally, and they would, it's very impressive what
Well,
you
and
can
these
get out of airsoft.
yeah, these are the guys that would go train together on the weekends with their real steel rifles, their ARs in their kits, and then they'd go to an airsoft event every other month, and that's where they then they practice their CQB and they apply the things they've been practicing with their rifles,
And they'd
and
roll.
oh, they just absolutely destroy people, and it really upset people because these people were actually putting in the work to do well,
To
and they
destroy
did.
these people, and they did.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get it from both sides because it's at the end of the day, it's also just airsoft, and these guys
Right.
that are
Right.
complaining just came to have some fun and shoot some BBs at people. But at the same time, if you're going to be agreeing to go to a Milsim event, you got to agree to the potential that there's going to be people actually using it as a military simulation.
Yeah,
Um,
we can't nerf people because they're better. Like they paid to be here too.
yeah,
So
yeah. So it's very impressive what you can get out of airsoft. I don't think you or I ever saw the full potential of it. But at least in the playing part and the learning, I guess, tactics. I just tactics is a scary subject for me because I know nothing. Um,
yeah,
but we learned a shit ton about kit, but I personally, and I'm not going to speak for you, I personally did not get out of it the teamwork sense, the individual sense, and just learning and playing and working at it and being the best I could with my gear and my gun and all that. Uh, I would like to revisit it someday, maybe when I'm not as busy as I am now, because to me, right now, honestly, going and playing airsoft at anything other than a very well put together milsim at like GTI, or like these GTI is a actual military training ground. Like any of those like really really big high value places that some milsim events put on. Um, I just have no desire to do it, but I
and those events can be quite expensive.
oh yeah, they can be, but if you here's the thing though, if you go into it with the proper mindset and you go into it wanting to learn the most that you can and not being a jackass about it and thinking that you know everything because these are just a bunch of little fucking airsofters versus me who shoots real guns, because you'll be humbled real fucking fast because
Yep.
these kids, this is what they do.
There's
So
going to be a
you're going to get
12-year-old
destroyed.
there's going to be a 12-year-old that absolutely rolls your ass, and you're not even going to know where he came from. Like
Yep.
You will be humbled.
So you just got to go into it expecting to not be the best one there. Just respect the rules and all that. There's not going to be any problems, and it's just, but you can get so much out of it. You can get so much out of it.
So should we go over just briefly, like for someone that's wanting to get into Airsoft and Milsim, just cover the basics, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. And if there's something that we don't cover, again, just message the Instagram. I will, either me or Levi will do our best to help you out.
Yeah, we're happy
I'm
to help.
always down to help. But
So at the sorry, go ahead.
no, you go for it.
Okay, so basically at the core, there's kind of a few different types of airsoft. There's kind of just the open play type of thing where there's fields that you can go play every weekend, and it's usually very casual. A lot of people wearing jeans and t-shirts and a mag in the back pocket, which there's nothing wrong with that.
I was gonna say that's how I was playing at the end of me playing Airsoft. It was
Yeah,
way more comfortable. Let me tell you.
there's nothing wrong with that. But there's generally a lot more shenanigans. Is that a fair word?
That's very fair to say.
A lot more silliness, a lot more stuff that maybe you're not going to want to put up with.
You would just go to have fun if you can stand that kind of fun.
Yeah.
Most people in the gun industry, or that I've met at least, probably are not going to be into that.
Yeah, the open play world is kind of what gives Airsoft a bad name for the most part. Your other type is going to be Milsim, which is short for military simulation, where there's a lot more structure, and it's typically at an AO they call it, or at, someplace like a training center like GTI. A lot of times you'll take military bases and play there, old abandoned hospitals, old abandoned malls, stuff like that. There's going to be a lot more. There's going to be kit requirements. You're going to have certain color kit and a minimum amount of kit. There's going to be
generally the colors are tan and green.
Yes, generally tan and green. And then you're going to be organized into squads with squad leaders and a command structure, et cetera, which is you can kind of go as far or as not into that as you want. Like for the most part, we would kind of do our own thing and not really be part of a command structure.
We'd have one guy that's like locked into the quote unquote command frequencies on the radios, and then the rest of us would just kind of be on our own separate channel doing our own thing, just so we at least have one person that kind of knows what's going on.
Yep.
That's the most we do. I don't think any of us ever, some of the other people that I used to play with took it a little more serious, but I don't think I ever went into like the squad leaders channels or anything like that to see all that. I think we just had one guy that had like a dual contact setup. That's all. Like tune into the command structure just and have their volume really low, and that's about as much as we did. But you can go as far as that with you want, or you can go as least far, whatever you want to do.
If you want to be really involved in like the special missions and going into all that, then that's great. That wasn't really our thing. We just wanted to shoot people. So yeah, I would definitely recommend if you're trying to do training, kit shakeout, stuff like that, I would definitely push towards the Milsim side of things. And there's 3 event producers that I would say are kind of the golden boys that you're probably going to have a decent experience at. That would be American Milsim, Third Coast Airsoft. They're both kind of a middle ground where, like I said, you're going to have all that structure and stuff, but you're going to quit at 8 o'clock that night. You're going to go back to your hotel, and then you're going to, come back the next day. The third would be, yeah, probably. And the third is going to be Milsim West, where you actually, like, you carry everything out on your back. You camp out for however long the event is. You have a limited amount of ammo. It's a much more realistic type experience, and they have their own unique things and everything. But so I would say starting out, I would definitely recommend an American Milsim or Third Coast event.
Yeah, I would probably put American Milsim over all those. Third Coast is from what I remember, has been getting into a little bit of drama recently. actually with an old friend of ours too. He just got, no, I won't get into that, but there's a little bit of drama with Third Coast, but they do have really good like events, meaning locations. American Milsim is still, I think, if you're gonna go to one, I would start with American Milsim. Milsim West, for as realistic as it is can also be it's very LARPy, in a sense that it's generally Russia versus NATO. And there's no, I don't have anything against the Russian faction that I knew when I was living back in out east, but I I know that there are some pretty bad eggs in the Russian, or at least they take it maybe a little too far with the memes and the all that. But so you can get it. And they definitely are very much LARPy with it. NATO is a bit better. I have definitely heard that a lot of the NATO guys can have pretty far sticks up their asses. But again, if you go into it doing your own thing, you can get out a lot. It's just that one is probably the one that you really want to be tuned into the command structure for, because you're out there for, it's generally 48 hours straight. And I mean, they'll let you leave, but it's very, very much frowned upon and expected of you to stay out there.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sorry, Milsim West, I would say, is not a good starting place because you're very much less free to just do your own thing. You're kind of expected to stay with your squad and do what you're told and follow the command structure, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's bad. But if you're a dude that's just starting in Airsoft, I would definitely get your feet wet in, like Hunter said, like an American Milsim event or something similar first. You're also going to there's much stricter kit requirements around the Milsim West games. So that's another thing to keep
I would stay away from Milsim West for your first one. I would do American Milsim, or I guess kind of, you can look for other organizers, but I mean, American Milsim is like really, they're top tier guys. They're very, very good. So
some basic things you're going to need to start out is obviously a rifle. You're going to need BBs. You're going to need whatever power source your rifle has, whether that's electric, gas, or compressed air. A lot of places, well, pretty much every event that I know of, is going to request some kind of barrel bag for when you're not in play. You're going to need some kind of full steel iPro, although I have heard some event producers are allowing Oakley M frames without full steel now, but
and you can run M frames. There's just a little kit called the Hilo kit that you have to buy. It's like $20.
I've heard a lot of them are not even requiring the Hilo kit anymore.
I would buy it just to be sure. Or look into the rules. I don't know what AMS is doing anymore.
I would say the biggest thing is just going to be every event producer has their set of rules, and you're just going to need to read through that. You're going to need a red rag to show when you're dead, and then you're just going to need your kit that you normally use. I guess the only other things to be conscious of would be just FPS on rifles and stuff, but that's all stuff you're just going to have to get into depending on what event organizer you're going to. And again, that's something that you can kind of message us about if this is something you're pursuing and you don't have someone else to kind of guide you down that road. So,
yep. And that's just the basic stuff. I mean, obviously you want, if you're like in shooting and stuff, you most likely have some kind of kit. So, you'll just have to probably buy some BDUs, at least the bottoms and the tops, just to blend in. They don't really give a shit about your kit, like your actual kit color. It's more what you're wearing in terms of top and bottoms. Some places you can totally get away with just like a pair of like jeans and some kind of pullover. Would I do that? No, I'd probably wear some kind of, maybe not sweatpants, but like some kind of just nicer loose fitting, or not loose, like tapered fitting, I would say, kind of pants. I would just get some cool or Kuyu pants and get the color that you need for that. If it be it like a darker green color or a khaki tan, that's what I used. That's what I mean. If I did it again, and that's what I was running when I was still playing at the end tours, I was wearing like cooler Kuiu pants with a PCU level 5 PCU or something like that, because that was the most comfortable thing for me, and
Yep.
you didn't look like a tool, and it was more comfortable than Cry whatever could be. So
Yeah, so most Milsim events are divided. You're divided into typically two teams, and usually it's green-based camo versus tan-based camo. So like, M81 versus multicam, or and they'll usually have a list in their rules of the approved camos and such. But yeah, that's just another thing to be conscious of.
yep.
But yeah, it's I think it can be very valuable. And like I said, especially for me, I actually, we were just talking about this the other day. I've been doing some changes on my play carrier, and I was like, man, I feel like I'd like to go to an airsoft event just to shake this out and like actually run it and make sure everything works, because from my experience, there's just nothing I've done that really shakes out some kit like going to an event like that.
No, nothing. It's very there's just nothing like it, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what you see, airsoft is like the only thing that you can really do it, unless you're like doing like simulations or stuff like that with like police or something like that.
Yeah, using sims.
You're just never gonna get that. So,
and another point to make is, if you are wanting to get into it, you don't need to buy like a rifle and then buy a bunch of fake accessories to go on it. You can buy a rifle and just slap everything from your AR on it.
yeah.
As long as you're like, if you're running an EOTech, I'd probably make sure and get some kind of Lexan or something in front of that lens, because I've definitely seen EOTech shot out with airsoft rifles. But
even if they do get shot out, just send it back to EOTech. They'll fix it for I think $80. So
yeah, it just something to be conscious of with that. But
obviously, you don't want it to get shot out. But
right.
Anything with glass, I'd probably put like a 1/4-inch layer of Lexan in front of it and call it good.
But the point being is basically that it can be, especially if you already have all the kit for your real stuff, it can be pretty affordable to get into airsoft.
Yeah.
Really, you just need to grab a rifle, power, and mags. That's all you need.
Yeah. I'm actually pulling up some airsoft guns right now that I personally know would work perfectly. And these are like, you don't got to touch them. Like they're good to go. And these are like $500, but again, you never got to touch them. They're good to go. They will work perfectly for as long as you need them to. All of them, if you don't, and you're watching this, you might not know everything about airsoft, but the way that they work is, one, they run off of a few different kinds of power sources. There's electric, their AEG, which is all electric gearbox, I believe. There's HPA, which is compressed air. They're the highest performance, but they're a big nuisance because you got to wear a fucking scuba tank on your back with a line attached to your gun, and they're very expensive. There's gas blowback, which is the most realistic, kind of.
Also the most detrimental.
Yep, and they're very. I hate gas blowback. They're as realistic as they are. They're just as unrealistic as well.
There's so much work. All the mags always leak the gas, and
you can't drop the mags and drop them on the ground, or else they'll break.
Definitely recommend AEG for starting.
Yeah. I mean, starting out and from then on, I would never touch anything else because AEGs have gotten so far since we were playing.
Yep.
I always tweaked every single thing in the gearbox to make it perfect, which I got. But now they're selling them stock like that. So, but the point is all of these guns now come with, it's called a quick change spring, which you just buy a couple of different springs and you can change how hard it shoots FPS wise. So if you're playing outdoors, they usually cap it at 400 FPS. And trust me when I say you want it to be at that 400 FPS mark.
Yeah, you want to be as close.
You want it to be at the max. Yep. Some people will say like, "Oh, it's okay. You can get accurate stuff from that," but one, you can, yes, but two, you want it to go as far as it can, carrying the most amount of energy that it can.
Mhm.
So when you hit somebody, they actually fucking feel it, because half the time when somebody doesn't call their hits, they don't even feel it. And then half the time when they don't call their hits, they're just being a dick and not calling it and cheating. But don't get mad at them. To just
There is that.
move along. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool. But yeah, I mean, like I'm looking at a fully licensed Mark 18 with like Knight's Arm and iron sights and like the correct coloring and all that. And it's $500, but it's set up. You're good to go. You just need to put your accessories on it and call it good. They got an MCX for $450 with the same gearbox, so it's just as well set up. They've got a BCM one of perfect, like it literally looks like a BCM 11.5 MCMR that you'd find in like a gun store, but this one doesn't have a brace on it because I mean it's airsoft. So
I want that one.
Yeah, me too.
And you can definitely get into it for cheaper. You're just not going to have
100%. Those are like the highest end that I'd say to buy.
Yeah, you can get an acceptable rifle for $200.
100%. Like G&G makes really good ones. SEMA,
Crytacs are like 3-ish, I think.
Yeah, Crytacs are good. I actually was looking Crytac up because I haven't heard of them in a long time.
Yeah,
but I'm sure they're still making stuff.
Yeah.
But
basically all this is to say that if you don't have gear yet, or if you don't have an AR yet, and you're looking for a way to get some reps on a gun and start collecting gear, Airsoft can be a great way. If you already have gear, you already have an AR, and you're not being able to get the training in that you're looking for, Airsoft could definitely be an opportunity for that if you have the discipline to put it in the right way. And yeah, I think it can be an invaluable tool if you use it correctly, and it's also it can really be a great time if you're doing it with the right people. So
yeah, that's about all I'd say about it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I mean that's how Hunter and I have met. That's something we bonded over and geeked out over together for a lot of years, and then we kind of moved on to the real stuff, which is even better. Just a little bit. Okay, a lot more expensive. Yeah, it's frowned upon, is what I've heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
definitely might go back to it.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm still open to going back to, and it's really cool to see the real firearms industry becoming more open to it, because it was definitely something that when we were doing it, you were very frowned upon. Like, I would never admit in like a shooting page that I played Airsoft back when we played, because you would just be absolutely dumped on. Yeah. So it's very cool to see that becoming more common and more open, and I'm hoping that can be a valuable tool to a lot of guys, and that it will really show a lot of people a lot of shortcomings in some gear, because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of times I've said like, hey man, I know that looks cool, but I can tell you from experience that's gonna suck when you like actually trade. Like, I see so many people stack so much stuff on the front of their kits because, well, it's easy to get to there. It kind of looks cool to have a bunch of stuff going on up there. It's like, yeah, dude, that's great until you try and lay down, and then it doesn't work. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff works that way.
Yeah, there's just
you don't know until you try it, and there's no way to try your gear unless you're out in a fucking war zone,
Yep.
Or playing Airsoft.
Yep. So I'm hoping a lot of people can learn a lot of stuff from that. Like Hunter said, if you guys have any questions about this, it's definitely something we've had a lot of experience with. So we're definitely happy to help you guys out and answer any questions that we can. Just message us over on the Instagram. And I think that's all I've got.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, happy airsofting. We will catch you guys on the next one.
All righty. See you later.